Hey everyone, my name's Andrew, and in this video, I'll be going over the steps to move out any villager in Animal Crossing New Horizons. With this method, on average, it takes me about 15 minutes to get the villager that I need in boxes. I will be using time traveling to move out my villagers, and disclaimer, there are some stipulations or details that you'll want to know before starting. I'll include on screen some important notes about moving out villagers directly sourced from Ninji and compiled by RC on Discord. When time traveling to move out villagers, keep in mind that to generate the thought bubble, you must have at least 6 villagers for one to ask to move. Nobody will ask to move out 5 days after you've told someone no. And after someone has moved out, there's also a 15-day cooldown where no one can ask. Villagers will be excluded from asking if their birthday is within the next 7 days, if their house is being moved, if they were picked the most recent time and told to stay, or if they were the most recent villager to move in. The chance for a villager asking to move out increases slightly each day until one asks to move out, and that increase caps after 30 days. Answering yes or no to this question resets that chance back to default, meaning that if you have a villager that has the thought bubble, but you don't want them to leave your island, it's best practice to not talk to them. Friendship levels do affect which villagers will ask to move out. Those with higher friendship levels will have a lower chance to generate the thought bubble compared to villagers with lower friendship. However, a max friendship villager is as likely to move out as villagers with 0 friendship level. Having extra residents on the island reduces this effect unless they're also building up friendships with your villagers. I won't get too deep into the math behind all of this, but in the video's description, you can find a link to a villager move out calculator, the Discord community, and Ninji's original data mining tweet. With all of that out of the way, let's get into it. When I need to move out a villager, I like to start by logging in after setting my clock to April 1st. After logging in, I'll then change the date of my calendar to May 1st. Next, I'll go ahead and save and close the game. You can mimic these steps in any month you prefer. I like to do it in April because there's less rain to deal with, thanks to all the cherry blossoms that come around. Essentially what we're doing is maximizing the chance of a thought bubble appearing by skipping forward 30 days and maintaining that boost by again rewinding back 1 month to April after we jumped to May. Some people in the comments may argue that you should close out of the game fully instead of saving and close. To my experience, I've never had any issues just saving and closing after I change the date and time, so it's up to your discretion how you want to operate. Again, I've never had any issue with it. Now that we've skipped 30 days, I'll go ahead and go back to my date and time and switch it back to April 1st. Essentially what we're doing is maximizing the chance of a thought bubble appearing by skipping forward 30 days and maintaining that boost by rewinding back 1 month to April. With this method, we're able to avoid some of the rain because we're operating in the month of April, and in addition to that, we're also able to benefit from the 30-day boost of time having passed. From here, it's just a matter of going through your island, possibly the residential services area. At this point, we're just going to look around our island to see if the thought bubble has appeared on anyone specifically that we're looking for. I think that on our island, I'm going to look to move out probably, Lily. Meaning that I need to know the time of when she'll be outside. So right now it's 2:26 p.m. and you can see that her curtains are closed. So for me, that's a good note to make because at 2:26 is going to be the time that I set whenever I'm time skipping around because I know she'll be outside. And just like that, the thought bubble is now on Lily. There are times where one of these bubbles may not be a move out bubble, but it could be your villager asking to give you a gift. So if you want to check, you can always go up to them and start the conversation. Now, as you can see, this conversation is obviously one where she's asking to leave. And let's just assume for a moment that Lily wasn't the villager that I was trying to move out. Let's say maybe I was trying to move out Lucky. To avoid dealing with the second cooldown that comes with telling a villager to stay, what you can do is immediately close out of the conversation by closing the game. And you want to do this so that way it doesn't save any of what you just did by starting that conversation. And essentially when I come back into the game, the thought bubble is still going to be over Lily's head. To move that thought bubble from one villager to another, you would simply not engage with the villager that has the thought bubble, in this case Lily, for the rest of the day. That way, the thought bubble has a chance to move to another villager the following day. This method also works for people that don't time travel as well. Just be sure to ignore that villager and see who the thought bubble transfers to on the next day. For those of us that do time travel, we can just return back to our date and time in our settings and move forward by one day. If you are looking for a specific villager, make sure that the time you set on your clock is the time you know that they'll be outside. Otherwise, you're gonna have a very difficult and not fun time. Even though Lily had the thought bubble yesterday to move out, it's not a guaranteed 100% respawn rate the next day. So if that happens, you can just continue on to the next day following that to see if it'll move on to the villager that you're looking for. I also can't seem to find Lucky anywhere, so I'm just gonna go ahead and skip to the next day. Managed to find Lucky. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the thought bubble, so what I'm gonna do now is, instead of skipping one day, I'm gonna skip 2, because on Saturdays it's really hard to generate the thought bubble as well, at least to my experience. So instead of skipping one day like I usually do, I'm gonna skip 2 just so that I can avoid Saturday. Unfortunately, it looks like a Marshall is the one with the thought bubble today, so we'll go ahead and skip another day. I'm just gonna go ahead and continue going up by just one day. I'm also gonna set the time back a little bit because I think Lucky was in his house just then, so I think he'll be outside for sure around 2:27. And he still doesn't have it yet. So Lucky still doesn't have the thought bubble yet today. Now it's important to mention that the thought bubble appearing is completely RNG, aka random. And there's factors that can help, such as decreasing your friendship with certain villagers by giving them trash or even hitting them with a net. But I typically don't do that because even though I cycle in a lot of new villagers with the permanent residents I have here like Diana, it's not uncommon that those permanent residents like Diana will ask to move even though we have a high level of friendship. That's just a result of the RNG that comes with the thought bubble, and that's why you see right now that it's currently on Sherb. Because the thought bubble, like I mentioned before, is RNG based, it could even end up on the same villager again the following day. You didn't do anything wrong, it just means that you have to fast forward to another day. And because the next day is Saturday, I'm gonna forward 2 days instead of 1. As you guys can see, after a few more days of time skipping, I was able to move the thought bubble over to Lucky. Again, he's not the villager that I was initially wanting to move out, but I want to show you, because I got Lily so fast, what that process looks like if you need to cycle through different villagers. Along the way, we saw it hop on to Sherb, Diana, and a couple others that I didn't show, but for the most part, that is the process that I use to move out villagers. Before I wrap up this video, I wanted to mention some helpful tips I wish I had known earlier. At this point, I've now moved the thought bubble onto Lily instead of Lucky, and we'll time travel to the next day and put her in boxes. Once your villager is in boxes, you'll have until 5 AM the following day to either find them a new home or watch them disappear on their own into the void. However, there is a trick you can use to keep them in boxes indefinitely. It does involve a bit of time travel. Be sure to take note of the date that your villager is in boxes. For Lily, that would be April 17th. That means that if I need to keep her in boxes a bit longer, I'll just make sure that every time I open up the game, I open it up on April 17th. By doing this, every time you log into the game, you'll be logging into the date that your villager is in boxes. This method is really helpful if you need more time to find your villagers a new home. It's important to remember that as soon as you log into your game with your Switch's date and time set to the next day, for me, that'll be April 18th, your villager will move out and you'll be left with an empty plot. This next tip is similar to the previous one and is for those of you who want to keep the plot from being sold by Tom Nook. Let's say you spent all day looking for a villager, I don't know, let's call him Raymond, but luck's not with you and you can't seem to find him. If you want to keep looking the next day, all you have to do is take note of the date your plot is open. For me, that's April 18th. Once you close out of the game, make sure that the next time you log in on the date that you left off of. For me, April 18th. Essentially, that's the date that you had an open plot, and it will remain open as long as you don't log into the game on any following date. This is the method that I use to keep my plot open, and I hope it helps you in finding all of your dreamies. Thanks again so much for tuning into this video. I hope it's helped you in some way. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.